On today's episode of the 1% Podcast, we're excited to welcome Senator Todd Lakey. Senator Lakey represents District 23 in the Idaho State Legislature and the State Senate. As the Senate begins its annual session, we're excited to welcome him in to talk about the items that are on the agenda this year, to talk about things that he's personally excited about, and to also learn about his experience, his life, as well as private practice, and then serving in the government sector. So we're excited to have Senator Lakey on the podcast with us today.
So my first job right out of law school was as deputy prosecutor for Canyon County. But if you look at states like Oregon and Washington and going soft on crime and soft on drugs and the trash heap that Portland's become or Seattle's become, or even the negative effects in Ontario of legalizing marijuana, and the homelessness, the mental health issues, all those things. And we're kind of, I like to describe us as an island in a leafy green sea.
Yeah.
They've legalized marijuana all around us.
With so many people moving to Idaho, in your mind and in your opinion and view, how do we best navigate, maybe at a city and a county level, of how to handle the amount of growth that's coming to Idaho? Okay, today we're joined by Senator Todd Lakey. Todd's been a friend of mine, and we appreciate having you on the podcast today, Todd.
Thanks for the invite, Kam.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're just starting the 2026 legislative session. Just kicked off yesterday, the day before. Kind of talk to us about that and what the next few months look like for you.
Sure. Well, we're just 2 days into it. First part of the session's, it kind of ramps up slowly. Started with the governor's state of the state yesterday. We're a lot of specifics in that, but the budget's going to be a big focus this year. It's going to be more about where are we going to cut things versus how are we going to use extra revenue.
Okay.
And then we always try to find a tax cut in there if we can. So I think that's going to be the main focus. Myself, I still try to find some good law enforcement, back the blue kind of issues. That's one of things I care about. I chair that committee. There's some agricultural issues we're looking at, and so it'll be a good session, but I think the budget will be the main focus.
Okay, very good. Did the governor, I haven't had a chance to listen to his address yet, did the governor addressed any specific topics or things outside of the budget objectives that he's hoping to get accomplished, or that the kind of the leadership in the legislature is hoping to get through this session?
Mm-hmm. I think, again, it's being such a focus with revenue being a little bit below forecast. That was kind of one of his main things. He talked a little bit about what he wants to do in regard to the budget, looking at reductions for others, but keeping K through 12 schools funding intact.
Yeah.
He talked about some of his kind of security points, referenced his cooperation with the Trump administration and making sure, we're cooperating and on immigration issues, and making sure that Idaho's quality of life and public safety is still really important. He's got some infrastructure funding in there as well. That's usually what we try to keep that to one-time money, right?
Yeah.
To pay for transportation or broadband infrastructure in the communities where it's not ongoing. So those are some of the things that you mentioned.
Okay. Well, I think those are some hot topics, especially the topic of growth and infrastructure and how we keep up with that. Obviously, a lot of people are moving to Idaho right now. And so, balancing how do we handle growth? How do we sustain not only our way of life, but also, kind of hang on to the heritage of what has made Idaho great and why people want to live here in the first place. So we'll get into some of those topics here in just a little bit. I'd like to start off by asking our guests about them and just kind of give you an opportunity to just kind of talk about where you grew up at, how you grew up, your family of origin, school, education, any other things like that kind of had a profound impact on your life growing up, kind of taking up to your professional career.
Sure. Okay. Well, the Lakeys, my side of the family comes from the Soda Springs area, so kind of eastern Idaho. But the family mythology is there was some fight over water way back. And so my great-grandfather moved from that valley and bought a ranch in eastern Washington. And my dad was born in Spokane. He was in the grocery business, worked for Albertsons initially, kind of a young store manager, and then worked for different companies. So with his job, I grew up all over the place. Not like lived in the same town all the time. I think I went to the same school. I didn't go more than 2 years in a row.
Wow.
So it teaches you to be flexible.
Yeah.
And adapt to change in new situations. But mostly the Midwest and Pacific Northwest. And then did a church mission to Dominican Republic. We lived in Utah at the time. Last 2 years of high school were there. And then went to BYU for my undergrad. Got my degree in international business. And my wife and I, we dated before I went on my church mission, and we got married, I want to say, I can't remember, 6 or 9 months after I got home. And then went to law school in Lewis and Clark, Northwestern in Portland. I was probably one of the few conservative voices in class there. It was dating myself during the Gulf War. And I was putting up support your troops signs. If I were putting up, no blood for oil signs.
Yeah.
But great school, very high quality student body, good education. And then first job opportunity came here. I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Portland my last year, helping them prosecute cases. And that opened the door at the Canyon County Prosecutor's Office. So my first job right out of law school was as deputy prosecutor for Canyon County. And I did criminal cases, and then I handled civil cases for the county and got to know the county commissioners at the time. And one of them wanted to retire. He said, "Hey, Todd, I want you to run for my seat. I want to retire. If you don't want to do it, I'll run again." And I'd been involved in Young Republicans in college and was involved in the Republican Party when I got there as kind of a young Republican representative. I never really had a plan to run for office. I knew somewhere down the road, public service was something that I thought was important, that interested me. But I decided, I enjoy being an attorney, but I like the opportunity to serve and to have a leadership role in the county. So I did that for a couple years. And I also, at that time, I had kind of a patriotic bone in my body, and me and another deputy prosecutor were looking at the military. He had some student loans that he wanted to get repaid, and I was looking at that and other things, and ended up going the officer route. So I was in the Army Reserves as a judge advocate, general Army lawyer for 20 years, and ran for county commissioner, and then have been in private law practice since. The Senate seat that I serve in the Senate now, that came about as a redistricting. Every 10 years, they redraw the boundaries of the census. And they redid the boundaries in Nampa. There was an open Senate seat. I had to run against a longtime House member that wanted the seat as well, but was successful. Been in, this is my 14th session now, so 7th term. And Jen and I have been married 40 years this year, and 5 kids, 7 grandkids, and life is great.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
So you currently serve for District 23 is how it's constituted now. It had been District 12 previously, correct?
Correct.
So how do you balance having your private practice, maybe kind of talk about what you do in your private practice, and then balancing the demands of serving in the state Senate as well, in addition to that? And it sounds like, as you've been in the reserves and other things, you've been a dad and now a grandpa. That's a lot to juggle. How do you maintain all that and handle all of it?
Boy, it's a challenge, I'll say. But you kind of know that going in. You want to make sure you've got, your family supportive. You want your business partners to be supportive. And I've been blessed with that over the years. My wife and I, Jan, we had a good discussion before I decided to run. And it's a hard balance. We're in session January, February, and March for the most part. And that's like another full-time job there. So I have good law partners that support what I do. They help cover things. Um, the nature of my practice is such that I can also, every lawmaker in Idaho has a day job, or they're retired or whatever. We're citizen legislators in Idaho, which I think is one of our strengths because we're connected to our community. We live with the consequences of our decisions. But my practice is such that I can work evenings and weekends. Don't work on Sunday, but I work a lot of Saturdays during the session. And then if we need to miss a day or miss an afternoon, usually for a hearing or something, we can do that. Yeah, legislators do that somewhat commonly. But it's during the session, it's largely the family that makes the most sacrifice, because I get up between 5 and 6, get to the Capitol. I get home between 9 and 10, go to bed, get up, do it again the next day. So it's making sure you have that support, and then trying to keep your priorities in place. And it's something that I think would be hard if you had a regular job to do long term. But it's working with family support and things now, and you just make sure you're always checking and keep that balance there and make sure that life is good the way it is and you're still doing good things.
Yeah. Do you feel like serving in that capacity while you're doing it in the form of a public service, it has to also bring indirect benefits to you, right? Like just as far as being aware of things that are happening, obviously having a say and presenting and authoring or working on different legislation that's taking place. In what ways have you kind of seen that that's helped benefit you or educate you or help you to be more dynamic in your own private practice?
I make sure first I absolutely keep them separate. If I'm in doing something as an attorney, I'm there as an attorney. If I'm doing something as a senator, I'm there as a senator. But they naturally have some crossover in a sense that as a legislator and as a successful business person, a lot of it is about relationships.
Yeah.
And both of those things help you build relationships just in different ways.
Yeah.
As a senator, I build relationships outside my law practice with local elected officials, business leaders in the community. Those relationships that I have built privately, they kind of, they're a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
And that gives me an opportunity to try to help them as a senator and carry legislation that may be important to the counties or important to a particular constituent or a business in my district, or an industry in my district, whether it's cattlemen or sugar beets or, pick your business.
Yeah.
So they're mutually beneficial. I definitely keep them separate, but as far as getting to know people in the community and building relationships of trust. So if you're interacting in one capacity or the other, they have experience with you. They've seen you operate. They know that you do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So it's beneficial that way.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that for sure. Over the years, you've had an opportunity to participate in a lot of different legislative sessions. Are there any bills or causes that you've been able to champion or author or be part of that you maybe have significant connection to or feel like you're very proud of and the impact that that's having on Idaho and the way that we live and protecting our way of life here?
Absolutely. There's I guess one thing that comes to mind immediately is in my role as chairman of the Judiciary and Rules Committee, I deal with courts, I deal with law enforcement and prisons, so the criminal justice system. And one thing that is so great about Idaho is we have safe communities. We believe in those community values, and you make sure that we are keeping the bad guys to the greatest extent we can off our streets and out of our state. And one of the big issues, you probably heard about it over the years, fentanyl is just crazy. It's like heroin on steroids, 100 to 1,000 times more lethal than heroin. And the last couple, it was 2 years ago, we had a last couple years prior to that, we had a big fight over putting fentanyl in the drug trafficking statutes that carry a mandatory minimum sentences for drug traffickers. We had marijuana, we had cocaine, we had heroin, we had methamphetamine, but not fentanyl, the worst of the worst. And that was a fight. There are some, kind of more libertarian oriented that are like drugs. They don't really hurt anybody but the user. But if you look at states like Oregon and Washington and going soft on crime and soft on drugs and the trash heap that Portland's become or Seattle's become, or even the negative effects in Ontario of legalizing marijuana and the homelessness, the mental health issues, all those things. And we're kind of, I like to describe us as an island in a leafy green sea.
Yeah.
They've legalized marijuana all around us. So taking that tough stance on illegal drugs, fentanyl being one of them.
Yeah.
But we've even taken action to try to limit the effects of marijuana in Idaho. Last year, we passed a bill that prohibits advertising illegal substances. So those billboards that used to advertise the pot shops in Ontario, you don't see them anymore.
Yeah.
Idaho is known for that stance, and that's something that I've fought for over the years. We had undercover officers talking with drug dealers on a wire, and the guy's like, I'm not coming to Idaho. I know what they do to drug dealers. I'm not doing it. And that's because we take that stance. We're serious about drugs and public safety in Idaho. Well, that's a fight I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
We're still always watching. They're trying to legalize marijuana on the ballot this year.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes a long ways in preserving our way of life and what we have here. And clearly it's attractive to a lot of people because we have people pouring in here by the droves from California, Oregon, Washington, all these other states around us that have taken on more liberal policies, and the way of life has continued to diminish. Last year we were actually in Portland, Vancouver area. My girls had a dance competition over there, and we had rented a Sprinter van to go haul all this together, right? We have 7 kids, and so it's a lot to get everyone in one vehicle together. So we go to Portland, spend the day, have a hotel in Vancouver right next to the convention center where the girls are going to be competing at. And one of the kids getting out of the van must not have closed the door all the way, right? It was latched, but it didn't lock when the rest of the vehicle locked. Anyway, I came out the next morning and went to open the door for the kids to get in, and there's a homeless woman sleeping in the van. Like, we're at a nice hotel. It's parked right out front because we couldn't even get it in the garage, so it's parked right out in front of the hotel. And there's a homeless lady sleeping in our van, right? Like, really, like, scared the kids. And walking the 1 block or so to the convention center, there's homelessness and there's garbage everywhere, and it's a completely different atmosphere than they're used to of having competitions at the Boise Center on the Grove or at the Nampa Civic Center or places like that. And so it gave us a good opportunity to be able to talk to our kids about the differences and why we love living where we live and the value that comes with that. But it doesn't come without people championing that cause.
Right. I remember we used to play pickup basketball when I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office with the parole officers. We'd go downtown and play, and it was clean, it was safe. The games got a little rough sometimes, but it was great. And the whole defund the police, make drugs legal, just give people counseling. That approach has just turned that city into graffiti. And like you said, the businesses are leaving because people are camping out in front. They're going up to people, and people are afraid to be there.
Yeah. I was super sad to go see like Pioneer Square and stuff in downtown Portland. And when they were having all the riots and stuff there a few years ago, and they'd broken out all the windows and set things on fire and just completely destroyed that whole what was, and in a lot of ways still is, a really beautiful downtown area. But policies impact behaviors, and they impact the way that your life looks. And I think that so many people think that they're more concerned about national politics, right? What they see in the headlines on CNN or Fox News or whatever, but they don't realize that the biggest impacts to your life happen at the local and the state level, right? And so getting involved with local and state politics, whether you're supporting candidates, whether you're going to run for public office, or whether you're going to back and get involved in causes that you believe in, is really important. And frankly, what I believe, being a responsible citizen is all about. I mean, if you talk about that for a minute, of people getting involved with causes that they believe in and the impact that has on helping formulate policies.
No, that's very important, and you're exactly right. The national stuff gets the attention, but what really makes a difference, you're most impacted by state politics, but particularly local politics. They're the ones where the rubber meets the road, literally, that employ the police officers that affect your business to a large degree, and the state as well on more of a policy level. I think I agree. That's part of our responsibility as citizens is to be aware and engaged. Can't say I blame people that aren't. People get busy with their lives, and not everybody thinks about those kind of things. But I think, we're in a wonderful state because people do care and are involved. And we live in a country that the form of government was inspired. People paid heavy price to have the freedoms that we have. And I think, at least for me, that means be aware, be engaged, try to make a difference in your community. And you do that by being involved, or communicating with those that are involved, or both. Not everybody wants to serve in public office, but you can volunteer, you can serve on different committees, and if the time's right, great, run for office. It's not for everybody, it's a challenge, but being involved is how you make a difference.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And being involved, whether that is eventually running for public office at some point or supporting those that are running, being aware of the issues. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but what are we spending our time doing? And finding time or making time to make yourself aware and educated about issues that are surrounding you and your community, whether those are local school board issues, whether those are city council, or things that are coming before your county commissioners, or at the state level. But being aware of those kinds of things matter, and getting people into public office that you trust and that stand for your same values. I unfortunately had the experience of seeing people that get elected into a position that don't represent the beliefs and the wants of the constituents of that area. And those people have to be held accountable. And if the citizens don't hold them accountable, then you're going to get impacts on your life that you didn't think that you wanted. But, it takes nothing more than good men and women staying silent to let, tyranny take over their lives. And that's what it takes. And it just happens in small bits at a time. So,
right. Yep. Very true.
Let's talk about you authored a bill that passed last legislative session, Senate Bill 1403, and talk about that and what kind of surrounded that, land use issues, and kind of handling what had kind of been a ambiguous structure between city areas of impact and county jurisdictions.
Sure. Well, it was an older statute, and I think it primarily started, in my mind, with just clarifying who is responsible for what, whose jurisdiction is it. And to me, in the case law, as an attorney, is very clear. The city has authority within its city limits. The county has authority outside the city limits.
Yeah.
And as a citizen, if I live outside the city limits, I vote for my county commissioners. I don't get a vote for city council. I don't get a vote for mayor. And therefore, that drew a clear distinction in my mind. And I think the case law was clear, and the code was kind of outdated. It gave the city more authority than I think they legally had. So we updated the code to clarify that the area of impact is the county's jurisdiction. because it's outside city limits. And so it's their ordinances, their plans that apply. At the same time, you try to work with the cities that are trying to plan for their growth, and they need to work with the county. An area of impact is a designation where they're supposed to try to work together, where the city is more likely to grow and therefore have more input over county decisions in that area. What we tried to do with the bill, again, first and foremost, is clarify it's a county decision. So city go to the county and convince them that this is an appropriate place for or line for the area of impact. And then it lays out the criteria for them to do that. They have to show that there are geographic factors that contribute, that there's commercial and business interests, that infrastructure, sewer and water is going to be provided in 5 years. And that timeline was something, this was a bill, we got cities, we got counties, we got contractors, we got everybody around the table. And that bill took 2 years to come together. So it wasn't, run anybody over.
Yeah.
It was build consensus. And there's been a few grumbles with cities implementing it. Because again, I think they felt like it was more their jurisdiction than it was the counties. But it was an important decision. Counties were particularly appreciative because it is their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But it just requires realistic planning for areas that are imminently likely to be in the city, and thus give them a little more input on that area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what sorts of problems do you see this eliminating or hoping to alleviate between counties and cities and helping that transition to work better, that entire process to work more smoothly, or in your mind, how do you envision this bill working of what that process should look like?
So it is a cooperative process, but it's also a process that has public input. And I think that's part of the representative form of government we have. Again, the people that live in the county don't get a vote for the city officials. So I think it helps the city be more aware of the desires and the feelings of those that live in that particular impact area when they're proposing their plan to the county, and then the county particularly being aware of public goals and objectives in their jurisdiction in that area of impact. And sometimes those things are different. A city is naturally more about growth and expansion, where the county, not necessarily. We've got agriculture businesses. We've got, it's more rural. The type of residential development you see in the county is typically different than what you see in the city. So striking that right balance, it is, I think, what that legislation was hoping to achieve.
Yeah. Let's talk about growth and development. Obviously, this is kind of at the crux of this issue with so many people moving to Idaho. In your mind and in your opinion and view, how do we best navigate, maybe at a city and a county level, of how to handle the amount of growth that's coming to Idaho? Obviously, it puts a demand on our infrastructure, our freeways, our road systems, but also our sewer and water, infrastructure as well. How do we handle that, and what are steps that can be taken, or ways that municipalities can be able to handle with that growth that's coming in from other states?
I guess first and foremost, it goes back to what you talked about. Elect people that have your views. There's lots of divergent views in the city and the county, but I do believe that those that are elected are there to implement and represent the people, implement the will of the people. Again, they're trying to balance divergent views on things, and growth is one of those things that can generate a lot of conflict and different views. So it's their role to balance that. It's the public's role and the business community's role and community leaders' role to provide that input to help those elected officials make that decision. Practically on the ground, it means they have a comprehensive plan that lays out what they want to see for growth, both for the city and the county. They have their respective plans, and how to meld that on the boundary is part of the challenge.
Yeah.
Um, and then they also have plans for infrastructure and expansion and how that's funded. And usually they rely on the development community to pay for that expansion of sewer and water. Sometimes the city will drive out main lines to promote, economic development or whatever, but it's largely on the development community. Similar with improvements, roads and things, the local government entities get their property tax and tax distributions from the state to pay for roads. But new development also, they bear they should bear their respective proportionate share of those costs that they add. So it's a lot of factors being put into those local government land use decisions, the plans and ordinances they have, and then the implementation.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, also with a healthy respect for property rights.
Yeah. And as we try to balance this, right, like Idaho has been Idaho for a very long time, and the heritage and the culture and what makes Idaho great, the agricultural heritage, the conservative values, a lot of those things that make Idaho a desirable place to want to live, the emphasis on family, all those things make Idaho a great place to live, and therefore it's attractive to other people coming in. And simply by nature, right, as you're allowing so many people to come into your state that have divergent views, and that is what it is as people come. But then as we grow and as we develop, are we developing in a way that diminishes or washes out our own culture, right? A community that may have had 15 or 20,000 people 20 years ago now has 50 or 60 or 70 or 80,000 people, the majority of whom didn't grow up here, don't have any connection to the area, now live in high density developments that have now taken over what was once a rural community, and really washing out the heritage and what made that community special and unique. How do we balance those two things, in your opinion?
That comes back to the comprehensive plans and the ordinances for the county. That's the responsibility of those city council members, your county commissioners, to listen again to the community and implement their values that they carried with them, that they campaigned on, that they talk about. I think those that serve really appreciate what we have in Idaho. I don't see a lot of people getting elected that, man, I knew how to do it in California and we got to do that here. But they, those that come from other states have certain mindsets about government and growth and things that they bring with them. But I think it's, again, those local officials that set the rules. They set the rules for development in their plan and in their ordinance. And those rules should reflect the values that we have. Like you said, not everybody wants to live in high density development. You've got kids that have a hard time buying a house these days. How do you strike that right balance? Where do you put the higher density development that you need that's more affordable for kids, whether it's a condo or an apartment or smaller homes? But then not everybody wants to live there. I live on 1.8 acres out by you. Yeah, you got a little more than I do, but I like living on, some land that's out away from the city, and where it is appropriate to put those things. From my perspective, preferably it's on the less viable farm ground, where farmers can keep farming and you use the ground that's not so productive for that more rural type of development.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about enclave and infill type of development. Running an analysis and looking at the city of Boise has done this over a period of time. I know a number of other municipalities have as well, about adding ADUs or allowing more high dense development in those infill and enclave areas rather than eating up Idaho's farm ground. I looked up a statistic the other day that over 2,200 farms in Idaho have disappeared over the past, I want to say it was 5 years. But, not all of those are completely developed, right? Like in some cases, it's a consolidation. but still like hanging on to that agricultural heritage that makes Idaho, Idaho. I think is important. It is important to a lot of the citizens that live here or have lived here for a number of years, and maybe talk about prioritization of how we handle infill development and those types of things in cities, as opposed to just, hey, going and grabbing more of our farm ground to go develop into.
I think the way again, your plans make a difference that the city has, because their plans do control their growth. Annexation is voluntary annexation. It's very, very rare that a city forces annexation just politically, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
But voluntary annexation is in accordance with their plan. What they typically do with infill, and I think the way to do it is to provide incentives to encourage, to have your plan say, we want to promote infill development, almost before or above, outward growth of city urban densities. And what they typically do is provide incentives to do that. You can have more density on this infill if you do infill compared to what you might be able to get for density going just straight out from the city. And you can have your plans be not just incentivizing, but, more limiting on the typical growth that just grows out to help encourage that infill. But there's lots of pockets there, of undeveloped land or land that could be redeveloped and repurposed within the existing city limits. It's not as easy as developing out.
Yeah.
You're in the construction business, and I've watched it from the other side. Sometimes you have to knock things over and change infrastructure and clean things up compared to just extending. And you got some nice prime farm ground that you grow out into that's a little easier to do.
Yeah.
So you got to provide some carrot to folks that are going to do infill to make it worth their while.
Yeah. And in some cases, it's nice because you're not pulling utilities far. If you are doing infill stuff, it's like, okay, everything's right here, close by.
Yep.
There's a minimal amount of impact that goes along with that. And in some cases, it can be highly incentivizing just simply because of those factors. As we wrap up here, we want to be conscientious of your time and getting back to the responsibilities that you have. You've had an opportunity, whether that's in public service, serving in the armed forces, in private practice, to see people that achieve great things at a high level. Our podcast is really all centered around helping people to find a path to becoming the best at whatever it is that they desire and want to do. If you could point out maybe some patterns that you've recognized in people that are high achievers or highly successful in a variety of different areas of experience that you've had, what are some common patterns or traits or attributes that you've noticed of people that manage to become the best? Maybe that's the best at gaining support for a bill. Maybe that's the best at running a successful business. Maybe that's the best at, making a project come together successfully, or whatever that looks like. What are some of those attributes and characteristics that you've noticed?
I think it comes down to a couple of things that I've tried to implement in my life that I've also noticed of others. That drive and that work ethic, to do things that are uncomfortable, to put in the effort to be successful. You combine the work ethic with the values, and I jotted them down, but we have some values at our firm that I also try to apply in everything. They're things like trust and be trustworthy, outwork others, embrace challenges, kindness is not weakness, be curious and learn, serve your community, keep work joyful, and live in gratitude. All those things are traits that I've seen of successful people. They know when to be a leader. They know when to provide input, and maybe be a follower in the right group, in the right setting. Let other people lead. Don't feel like your ego is so big that you're worried about other people having success. Hiring people that are maybe better at something in your organization than what you do. So I think living those values with your work ethic, with integrity, with that vision, to achieve success, but in accordance with your values, not running over the top of other people, but helping other people be successful as you're successful yourself.
No, I love that. And I loved how you said, you brought up about curiosity to learn and just having that perspective of trying to learn every single day. And that's a pattern that I've recognized in a lot of successful people that I've been able to interview or have friendships and relationships with, is that they're always trying to learn. They're always trying to get better. Like they're always gleaning from other people around them. They're always observing and watching how this person maybe speaks in public, how this person communicates with others, how this person runs this business or does this thing or works, as a father, as a husband, like whatever that is, like taking opportunities to learn from others, I think is a really powerful trait that some of the most successful people that I've ever been around seem to all have, that they're always looking to get better and they're willing to learn from anyone and every source that they can. So
yeah, absolutely. And that comes with, I think of Coach Sataki for BYU football.
Oh, yeah.
Be humble, be hungry.
Yeah.
And being humble comes with that willingness to learn. I'm good at lots of things, but there's other things I'm not good at. And recognizing that, how can I be better? Who's good at those things that I'm not, that I have opportunity to improve in? So evaluating yourself, but watching others, again, encouraging others to be successful, look at their strengths. How can I implement that in my life? Try to learn something new every day.
No, love that. If you, looking back over your life and maybe people that you associate with currently or others that you've associated with in the past, can you think of leaders or mentors, people that have had a significant impact on your life and lessons that you learned from them or things that you observed that helped impact you and decisions that you've made and the direction that you've chosen to go with your life?
Well, I first think of my dad. My father was a big influence in my life. He got up early, and was going, worked long days, supported his family. But Dad, I don't know if you've met him.
Oh, yeah.
May have been in your ward.
Yeah.
Even at 80 years old, he's got one gear, and it's go, 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 go. He used to take me to work with him when he was out. He was in sales position with Mother's Cookie Company. I'd ride on a truck with him and get out of the van, and you're not walking. You're walking fast to get in there, and you're working to get through things. So that work ethic of doing your best and making sure that you're working hard. But he also, you work smart. He would tell me about how we're doing this and doing that. And integrity. I remember somebody paid too much for something, and he turned around and went back and made sure that he corrected that account. It was dollars and cents. It wasn't anything big, but being honest with people. I think that's what helps that trust and be trustworthy. People are if they know they can trust you, that you're honest, they're gonna listen to what you have to say. If you're trying to achieve something with them, and just that's the right way to live your life.
Love it. Are there any other resources, books, things that you've listened to, habits, other things that you put into your life that you feel like have made a big impact on you that you would recommend to our audience?
So I'm a little old school, I guess, but I'd say the first time I read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, oh man, that was life-changing. Trying to prioritize what's important and urgent and unimportant and less urgent and leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
That book had a huge impact in my life, and trying to figure out what are my priorities? What do I spend my time on, and not spending time on things that aren't so important that may be urgent. I still have a struggle with that.
Yeah.
It's easy to, I can get this done and check off a box, but it's not really helping me achieve what's important and what benefits me or my organization or my family long term. That's one that comes to mind. Others, I read a handful of things here and there.
Yeah. No, I love it. I remember the first time that I read 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, I remember writing a note to myself that said, I need to read this book every year for the rest of my life, right? Just to refresh on it. And I haven't read it every year, but I probably read it 4 or 5 times. And every time I read it, I learn something new, and it has a renewed impact on me. In fact, it's pretty rare that we ever host a training session. We do them here quarterly, that I don't reference something from Statement Recovery 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So no, that's definitely one that I would recommend to anyone who is up and coming in their career, or if you're well established, no matter where you're at. That's a great one for helping you view and reprioritize your life and your direction and what matters most to you, and gaining personal mission statement and what you stand for and why you stand for it. So no, love it. Senator Lakey, appreciate you being here with us. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
It's been awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.